Today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I mix vocals in Logic Pro X using a mixture of third-party plugins and Logic stock plugins to get the desired vocal I want. This is a method that I use every time. I always use the same order for plugins, and the whole point of this video is just to show you how I do it, see if you learn anything from it, and if there's any plugins that you see me using in this video that you might be tempted to get yourself, because there's some very good plugins that I'm using in this video in terms of just how well to utilize them to mix a vocal, and some of them you may not have heard of, but I will talk to you about them as we go along. But let's get straight into the video. We're going to mix a dry vocal stem, and we're going to get it something really nice, polished and nice, EQing, compression, and a little bit of effects on the output. So let's get straight into the video and let's mix this vocal. Okay, so we are now in Logic, and this is the vocal here that we are mixing. I'll just quickly play a little bit of a snippet of what it sounds like without any editing at all.
I met you like I've never met a man like you before. High above the clouds, on a jet plane heaven bound. I fell into your seat while you were falling asleep. A funny way to fall in love.
Okay, so the vocal itself is not actually that badly recorded, other than the fact there's some plosives which are really stick out in the vocal from the recording, so we may want to address that a little bit. But the first thing I want to do is I want to create a general balance in the vocal and sort of decrease the dynamic range just a little bit, just so the quieter parts of the vocal and the louder parts of the vocal come closer together and to get a more level volume on the track. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our mixer, and the first thing we're going to add is a compressor. Now, this is the digital platinum compressor, and yes, I'm using third party in stock, but the first thing I'm using is a Logic stock compressor, and I just like to do this just to create a little bit more control over the lows and the highs. So again, we're very basic compression, just like a little threshold and ratios. You look at it on the graph, so it's just trying to round off the more audible parts and try and like lower that ceiling just a little bit from the peak of the vocal, and then move on to the next thing. So that's very simple to do. As we're going to use our first plugin, and I use Waves plugins. I'm a little bit of an endorser of Waves plugins without being endorsed by them, and I'm going to show you one of my favorite plugins by them, and that is the RVox or Renaissance Vox, and this is a compressor with a built-in noise gate which is solely designed just for using on a vocal, and this is an incredible plugin. It really can bring a vocal to life just with a couple of changes. Now, I have done a full review on this video, which I'll leave the link below, as well as where you can get this plugin for a full tutorial on how we use it. But basically, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the compression on it and just decrease that dynamic range a little bit.
You like I've never met a man like you before. High above the clouds.
And I'm just going to turn the gain down because I don't want the vocal to be too loud yet, because there's still a lot more we want to do to it. So if we're peaking the vocal too early in this chain, then it's going to create a little bit of clip distortion. So we're just controlling that. Now go around -4 normally does. So you can see it working there. And next thing we use is the gate. We're going to try and trim off them silences a little bit. And basically the higher that we put this, then basically it's going to cut the silence at whatever dB this is. So again, like this would be a very aggressive noise gate, and you'll really start to hear it work. But let's just apply it and see what happens. So you can hear that's completely on.
And you're my universe, you're my all-time high.
But I'll adjust it to there. So you'll slightly hear that when she stops singing, the audio just drops a little bit in the vocal, and that's again just any unwanted noise. We're just trying to get rid of it. So now we've got a little nice balanced sounding vocal. We're going to now start to chip away at the sonic quality of it with an EQ. Now, this is a very special EQ that I'm using with Waves. This is a dynamic EQ, and this is an incredible type of EQ that I highly recommend you get, because it's adaptive to the signal that's coming in. It is the F6 or the F6 RTA. RTA gives you that level meter in the background so you can see the audio. But this is kind of like a compressor and a EQ built into one. So basically you can select a certain frequency here on the EQ, and then below, again, like an adaptive dynamic EQ, sorry, because you can then adjust the threshold so you can get the EQ to start reducing the volume at a certain level. If one frequency is peaking too high, you can control that ceiling. And now I could explain it to you, but let's just show it in action. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this low cut here, turn it on,
High above the clouds,
and then drag it down till you don't hear it doing anything. There you go. And just doing that there, it's going to cut a little bit of the plosives as well. So we're starting to get rid of that unwanted noise. Now, again, I like to visually look at this more than audibly because use my ears, because you can see what frequencies are peaking the most and which ones are the problems which you want to squash a bit more. So let's play. So firstly here, so now the threshold, this is where you can see the volume. I'm going to turn it to 12 o'clock on the threshold, so that's minus 30 dB, and I'm going to turn the range down just a little bit, and that's going to start reducing the volume. So let's just see what happens here. So keep an eye on here.
Now I'm your girl and you're my universe.
So you can see the volume squashing down when the volume goes above a certain point. And it's great if there's any unwanted noise you just want to control if it tries to pop out in the mix.
You're my all-time high.
I'm just going to do it in a couple more places.
You're a hell of a guy with a heavenly vibe. Boy, you make me fly.
Now I'm going to go looking here.
Got my man in.
Yeah, cool. So then we'll do that as well. And again, that just... it's just further cleaning up the mix. Now, I really want to clean up the mix because of the next stage, which is parallel compression. Now, parallel compression, it's a really good way to really make that vocal pop in a mix. So we're going to go out a bus send, and we're going to put a compressor onto a bus send. And again, we're going to use this time a Studio FET, which is another type of, I've forgotten the word, but basically this is based off of a compressor in the industry. And this is an emulation, that's the word I was looking for, emulation of an industry compressor. This one has really nice low warm end, and because we've been cutting that out of this mix here, we're going to add it back in a little bit more saturated. And so what we're going to do is we're going to absolutely crush this compressor to the max and pull the attack up, and then what will happen is if we now press the vocal in and try and start turning up the signal from the bus end, we're going to get like the vocal not only becoming a lot more squash sounding and like reduce the ceiling, but also like, you know, reducing the dynamic range, but it's also going to like add that saturation to it.
I met you like I've never met a man like you before. High above the clouds on the jet plane heaven bound.
There you go. Now, because we're bringing up a lot of audio, we also want to EQ this as well to get rid of any unwanted noise. I'm hearing a lot of boxiness, so at this point we're going to just use a channel EQ and we're going to go looking for that unwanted noise. So let's do that.
I fell into your seat while you were falling asleep. A funny way to fall in love.
So get rid of the boxiness. Then 2 to 4K, typically on a male and female vocal, you get them horrible sibilances. So we're going to try and reduce them.
And you're my universe, you're my all-time high.
See, that's not very nice frequency. We're going to cut that down a bit.
You're a hell of a guy with a heavenly vibe. Boy, you make me fly.
Let's just get rid of that as well.
Got my man in the moon, being hooked.
Maybe one more. Let's go looking for something else.
High.
There's something quite high up which is annoying me, so let's go looking for that.
A funny way to fall in love.
There it is.
We left the earth. Now I'm your
and we're going to do the same again, just roll off some of that low end that we don't need. Did you hear that up there? So now we've got it sounding very clean, very, very produced. We're going to add our de-esser to get rid of that last bit of sibilance in the high end. And one thing I like to do for the sibilance is incorporate sibilance. It's a great little plugin which analyzes your vocal as it goes along. It comes a nice little graph up here.
Like you before, high above the clouds, on the jet plane heaven bound.
We go. And then lastly, this may surprise you, but then I do one more EQ just to finally shape everything that we've done and get it sound exactly how we want it. Because basically the whole point of doing all of this is to bring out all the best qualities in the vocal and then also at the same time try and cut that as we go, and you were left with the finished article. Now I'm going to use the Q10 because it's got 10 different frequency bands, which is incredibly helpful if you want to do a lot of trimming. So let's just do our final sort of sculpting of the vocal.
I fell into your seat while you were falling asleep. And funny when jet plane heaven bound. I fell into your seat while you were falling asleep.
There's a lot in the high end we want to try and chop. Let's try and address that.
We left the earth. Now I'm your girl, and you're my universe. Ooh. You're my all-time high.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for them standout frequencies, because they're the ones you want to get rid of.
High above the clouds, on the jet plane heaven bound. I fell into your seat while you were falling asleep.
That's what I can hear as well.
Funny way to fall in love. We left the earth. Now I'm your girl.
Just add a bit of air.
And you're my universe. You're my all-time high.
Keep going.
You're a hell of a guy with a heavenly vibe. Boy, you make me fly high above the clouds on a jet plane heaven bound. I fell into
There's something here I want to get rid of.
you were falling asleep. A funny way to fall in love.
Oops.
We left the earth. Now I'm your girl.
Nice.
And you're my universe.
Now
You're
that
my
sounds so good. There's a little bit more just on the output, like of say, like in the sibilants, I want to try and get rid of.
high above the clouds on the jet plane heaven
You can just
bound.
hear it.
I fell
Maybe I'm going to
into
use the
your
EQ to try and get rid of it.
sleep, falling asleep.
We've got one more.
A funny way to fall in love.
Let's find it.
We left the earth. Now I'm your girl.
Can you hear it?
And you're my universe. You're my all-time high.
Trying to find
You're
it.
a hell of a guy with a heavenly vibe. Boy, you
Oh, there
make
it
me
is.
fly high above the clouds on a jet plane heaven bound. I fell into your seat while you were falling asleep. A funny way to fall in love. We left the earth.
Cool. So, and that, now I'm happy with that. It sounds so much better than it did before. Let's quickly do a comparison. If we turn everything off, this is what the vocals sound like before.
High above the clouds on the jet plane heaven bound. I fell into
You can hear there's a lot of sort of like
falling asleep.
unwanted sort of almost background noise in there, and then plosives. Then this
We
would,
left the earth. Now I'm your girl and you're my universe.
it's just got so much
You're
more
my
of a
all-time
crisp sound now.
high. You're a
It
hell
sounds
of
so
a
much
guy
cleaner.
with a heaven.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in just some effects. Now at this point, this is just a in your discretion thing. I'm just adding it just, you know, for the sake of the video, where effects is a lot more of a producer's choice on what you want to do. What I normally like to do is I like to make a bus, and I'll first chuck my favorite reverb on, which is the ROM, which I never know how you properly pronounce it. And I do like to just go with the preset just because it's easier than just memorizing this, and it's the vocal warmer.
High above the clouds on the jet plane heaven bound.
And we don't stop there because we want to EQ it, but I want it to be a little bit more on the bright end. We don't want to muddy up the mix too much, so normally take a little bit out. And then one of the things that I always try to do is use side only, because this creates a lot more separation in the reverb and makes it a lot more stereo sounding. So that's one thing that's really cool to do. And then I'm also just going to put in a delay as well to sort of extend the decay of the reverb. And I normally just like to go for the alternating pattern, 100% dry, and then just a little bit of wet.
High above the clouds on the jet plane heaven bound.
And it's just subtle, it's in the background, but it works.
Falling asleep, a funny way to fall in love. We left the earth. Now I'm your girl and you're my universe. You're my all-time high.
Cool.
You're
There you
a
go.
hell of a guy with a heavenly vibe. Boy, you
So yeah, guys, that is how I mix a vocal. Again, like all the plugins that are third party and not part of Logic's stock plugins, I will link below so you can check them out for yourself. And any some of the plugins I have done tutorials on, so I'll leave links below to them as well if you want to check them out. And if you've got any other questions as well for things like parallel compression or dynamic EQs, then again, comment below and suggest if I should do another whole video on just on them topics. But I hope you found this video helpful. And yeah, use all this. Try and use this chain on your vocals. If you don't have the specific plugins as well, one thing I say, the RVox, it's literally just a noise gate and a compressor in one. So to achieve the same effect, you can have your compressor and then just link another compressor below in parallel, and then use a noise gate, and that's just a separate plugin which you can use. And then basically it's the same plugin. RVox just has it all in one, which makes it very handy. But again, guys, thank you for watching to the end. If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button and keep making music, and I'll see you in the next video.